Hello students, Dr. Poonam here, Associate Professor, Department of English, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Government College, Shri Ganganagar. Today I will teach you the novel Samskara, originally written by U.R. Anantmurthy in Kannada language. Later on, this novel was translated by A.K. Ramanujan in English. So, this is part 1 of this novel. The summary, I will tell you the summary and the overview of this novel, and you can see Samskara, the novel, then about the writer. So, U.R. Anantmurthy was an Indian contemporary writer and critic in the Kannada language. He was born in Third Hall, Taluk, and is considered as one of the pioneers of the Navya movement in 1994. He became the sixth Kannada writer to be honored with the Jnanpith Award, the highest literary honor conferred in India. In 1998, he received the Padma Bhushan Award from the Government of India. He was the Vice Chancellor of Mahatma Gandhi University in Kerala during the late 1980s. He was one of the finalists of Man Booker International Prize for the year 2013. He remained a fervent critic of nationalistic political parties until his death from kidney failure and cardiac arrest on 22 August 2014. This was all about the writer, the original writer, U.R. Anantmurthy. Then we see that U.R. Anantmurthy in this novel, in A.K. Ramanujan's translation from the Kannada, tries to teach Indian society a lesson in this story about the trouble with prioritizing tradition over compassion. So, we see that Samskara, there are 10 chapters in this book. This book is written in 10 chapters, and this book begins. Samskara begins with one of the central cleansing and purification rituals in the rites of Hindu worship. Praneshacharya, who is the leading character in this book, he is the most respected Brahmin in his traditional and conservative Agrahara, begins each day by bathing the sickly and desiccated body of his infirm wife. So, in the first chapter, it begins narrating the routine activities of Praneshacharya. His activities are divided into domestic and religious. So, Praneshacharya has faithfully carried out this ritual for more than 20 years. He views sexless marriage as a penance and a sacrifice that will deliver salvation in this life and in the next. But the death of an impious and sinful Brahmin, Naranappa, in the Agrahara brings Praneshacharya to a spiritual crisis of his own that makes him question his long practiced rituals and beliefs. The cleansing ritual that he performs on his wife at the beginning of the story is the last time that he will perform this expiating routine. This is the beginning of the end for Praneshacharya's spiritual cleanliness and purity. And the central theme of the novel is the death of Naranappa and the complications connected with the issue of his cremation. Naranappa was an anti-Brahminical Brahmin who spent all his life in defying Brahmin beliefs and lifestyles. He brought a lower caste prostitute to the Agrahara and lived with her in his house. He even invited Muslim friends to the Agrahara and openly consumed alcohol and non vegetarian food so as to insult the other Brahmins. So, when Naranappa dies, his cremation became a complicated issue. The Brahmins did not want to do the last rites of Naranappa because they were afraid that the Guru at Sringeri might excommunicate them for cremating such a man. Then it is Chandri. Chandri is also there. So it is Chandri means Chandri. Who is Chandri? Chandri is Naranappa's low-born lover who delivers the news of his death to the Agrahara. This announcement causes an immediate conflict over the performance of the death rites for this blasphemous man, for this means impious man, you can say, whom they continue to allow to live among them. The Brahmins' failure to act in the face of Naranappa's sacrilege can be viewed as the first of Anandamurti's many criticisms of the Brahmins' way of life. Their laziness or fear or lack of conviction or a combination of all three prevent them from expelling Naranappa from the Agrahara. Now that he had died, none of them want to be responsible for performing the death rites for his body. In chapter 2, we can see the second chapter describes the houses in the Agrahara, the place dominated by houses of Brahmins. Most of the houses resemble the same except for the kind of flowers grown at the backyard. Naranappa's house is the biggest of all the other houses in the Agrahara. The Madhava Brahmins sent by Praneshacharya from this well-known place of Durvasapura to go to Parijatpura to inform about Naranappa's death and also to know whether they would be willing to do the funeral rites for him. They go first to Manjavya's house and he receives them warm and asks his wife to treat them as their guest. So the when the man Naranappa, he has died, so nobody want to be responsible for performing the death rites for his body. The Brahmin's inertia during Naranappa's life is extended to the event of his death. Anandamurti slowly exposes their sins and shows how the erosion of their core values begins to disintegrate their traditional community. The rotting of Naranappa's body, as the Brahmins argue over ritual and duty, mimics the rotting soul of their highly exclusive society. Praneshacharya addresses his village thrown into great turmoil. Praneshacharya says here, what is the way out now? Can we just fold our arms and stare at a dead body laid out in the Agrahara? According to ancient custom, until the body is properly removed, there can be no worship, no bathing, no prayers, no food, nothing. And because he was not excommunicated, no one but a Brahmin can touch his body. So, the stubbornness of wanting to follow sacred law causes Naranappa's body to rot. The Madhava Brahmins sent by Praneshacharya from this well-known place of Durvasapura go to Parijatpura to inform about Naranappa's death and also to know whether they would be willing to do the funeral rites for him. They go first to Manjavya's house. When Garuda inform about Naranappa's death, the Parijatpura Brahmins are happy to do the rites because he moved with them without any caste pride, and also they considered it a pride doing rites for a high caste Brahmin. Shankaraya, the Parijatpura priest. Shankaraya is the priest at Parijatpura of Parijatpura community, also shows interest and displays his knowledge of their religious texts. But when Durga Bhatta subtly raises the question whether Naranappa is a Brahmin, Shankaraya hesitates because he does not want his people to do anything non-Brahminical. Therefore, he does not want his people to do anything non-Brahminical. Therefore, he says that they can do the rites according to Praneshacharya's instruction, and Manjavya offers to pay money for the funeral rites. Now we can see that chapter 3 is there. So in third chapter, Praneshacharya goes through the palm leaf text to find a solution to Naranappa's funeral rites, while the Madhava Brahmins are in Parijatpura to inform about Naranappa's death. The stubbornness of wanting to follow sacred law causes Naranappa's body to rot, which makes the Agrahara unbearable to the living. Between the horrible stench, the abundance of rats, and appearance of vultures, all members of the community must flee. The Brahmins place ritual above what is considered a basic human right, the decency of a respectful and timely burial regardless of the deceased religion. When the novel was written in the 1960s, many South Indian Brahmin communities criticized the harsh portrayal of their conservation in the conflicts over Naranappa's death ritual. So those Brahmins of South India, they criticized the novel at the time. It is no wonder that these Brahmins would be upset by this depiction of their religious sect as ridiculous hypocrites with individual hedonistic obsessions. The Brahmins in the novel at least feign piety and self-control, while Naranappa openly flaunts his rejection of their strict practices. So the thought of Naranappa makes Praneshacharya realize how he has been a problem all through his life. Praneshacharya recollects a bitter conversation. When he went to Naranappa's house to meet him, Naranappa disrespected and treated him with contempt. He also remembers how Naranappa made Garuda's son Shama and Lakshmana's son-in-law Shiripati to go astray from Brahminical tradition. Shama ran away from home and joined the army, while Shiripati almost took the lifestyle of Naranappa. He even remembers the day when he brought Muslims with him to the Ganpati temple stream and caught the sacred fish. During their heated conversation, Naranappa has said, "I will destroy Brahmins. I certainly will. My only sorrow is that there is no Brahmanism really left to destroy in this place except you." Then we see chapter 4. In fourth chapter, the Brahmins come back from Parijatpura. Garudacharya's enemies blame him for punishing Shama severely. Shama's parents, Garudacharya and Sita Devi, are left in the lodge not knowing the whereabouts of Shama. After a gap of about 3 months, they receive a letter from him informing that he had joined the army, and if he has to be relieved, a penalty of 600 rupees has to be paid. Sita Devi does not have sufficient money to pay the penalty and get her son relieved from the army, but her hope brightens as she thinks that her husband might get a chance to do the funeral rites for Naranappa and legally get Chandri's golden ornaments. Garudacharya does not want his situation to become like that of Naranappa. Hence, he sneaks into the Pranishacharya's house and tries to persuade him to allow him to do the funeral rites for Naranappa. If so, he would get the golden ornaments of Chandri, and that would help him to redeem his son from the army. But Pranishacharya is stubborn in going through the texts to find a solution. Then we can see in this novel there is another Brahman, Durga Bhatta, cannot stop leering at Chandri, who is rarely seen outside of Naranappa's home. The description of Durga Bhatt's lust exposes the duplicity of the supposedly religious man. We can see in the novel, I caught the lines of the novel for the first time. His connoisseur eyes had the chance to appraise this precious object which did not normally stir out of the house. This choice object that Naranappa had brought from Kundapura, a real sharp type exactly as described in Vatsyayan Manual of Love. Look at her toes, longer than the big toe, just as the love manual says. Look at those breasts. In sex, she is the type who sucks the male dry. Her eyes, which should be fickle, are not misty with grief and fear, but she looks good that way. Unquote. So Anand Murthy does not hold back in his criticism of the Brahmin's way of life. The portrayal of the Brahmin's selfish reactions to Naranappa's death, especially of Durga Bhatta's longing for this grieving woman, makes their outward show of piety even more perverse and ridiculous. In order to entice the Brahmins to bury her lover, Chandri takes off her gold jewelry and adornments and ornaments and offers these ornaments to the men of the village. The lure of gold causes many of the Brahmins to change their minds about performing the death rituals for Naranappa. Several of them decide that the material gain from the burial is worth putting their Brahmanhood in jeopardy. Fighting begins over who will have the right to lay Naranappa's body on the funeral pyre. The exposure of the Brahmin's duplicity reads like a tragicomedy about a family that fights over the earthly possessions of the deceased before the funeral has taken place. So meanwhile, Dashacharya comes there and urges Praneshacharya to do something to dispose Naranappa's body. He suggests that Praneshacharya can cause the gold for the Maruti god and they could dispose the body. Praneshacharya then asks all of them to go home, saying that he would go according to the ancient religious text. Then in chapter 5 we can see the summary here of chapter 5. In 5th chapter, Shripati does not know about Naranappa's death as he is out of Durvasapura to Shirinali. After spending time with the drama troupe on the night of Naranappa's death, he walks through a dense forest to Durvasapura. While nearing Durvasapura, he sees a hut burning, and in the light of the fire, he sees Bali walking to a bush, half naked after having bathed in warm water. He tries to make love with her, but she prevents him, saying, "People die due to some supernatural power." Shripati came to her to make love to her, but being disappointed, he goes to Naranappa's house, thinking of spending the night at his residence. When he sees Naranappa lying on the floor, he thinks he is asleep, but when he removes the blanket, he finds his body as cold as a dead rat. So, this was in chapter 5. So, students, I will discuss the remaining 5 chapters of this book, of this novel, in my next video. I will discuss it tomorrow. The second part of the novel, means the second part of this book. Thank you.